The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. We have very active lifestyles. It's not all wandering the countryside aimlessly or scaring passing motorists. And we all love a good cup of joe. And there's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
I'm choosing to ignore the cuts and bumps and bruises. I'm cruising through these haters, leave them looking stupid. They foolish if they think they'll ever hear my conclusion. I'm through with all these part-timers and their excuses. I'm bruising eagles left and right every time I do this. I'm shooting for the top, no I'll never settle where you did. The future's in my hands, my grip will never loosen. My crew is ready to obtain the absolution, removing any doubt that we was ever fooling.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another kick-ass episode of Still Toking with. Yeah, you already know who I am, so I won't bore you any longer with that. But what? There's the voice in my head again.
It's October now.
It's October, he says. Time for some scary stuff. Well, we'll get to that later. But the one, the only, the Flash himself, Mr. Jeffrey Mark.
Hi ho, cats and kittens, and I love doing this show, and I love being here with two brothers from other mothers. Ben is one, and the other is our other co-host, and boy, both these guys are really good looking and really smart, but this one's name is Jeff Holman. Jeff!
Happy Wednesday, happy October, goodbye September. Yes. 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 It was a rough month. Anyway, Ben had a birthday a couple of days ago, so I want to say again, happy birthday to Mr. Ben. You're getting old, you old fuck now. You know,
Thank you.
Yes.
Well,
no problem.
listen. Now that you want to throw people under the bus, Mr. Holman's got a birthday coming up next week, and he's older than me, so.
And Jeffrey Mark had a birthday last week, and I'm older than both of you, so shut up.
That is true. That is true.
That is true. We're all fucking Libras. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm a Virgo.
No, he's
You're a Virgo.
He missed the cutoff by like a couple days.
Oh, no wonder you're a little fucked up.
I was wondering why. Now I understand. Thank you so much for illuminating my life with that. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Anytime. Anytime. I love you for that. But anyway, let's get on with the show. Let's see if I can fuck this name up, even though we went over it before. Mr. Jhn Ricciutti. Did I say that right?
Ricciutti.
Ricciutti. Yeah, you're good.
Ricciutti. I was good. I was close.
Welcome, John. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if you say that by the end of the show.
You scared him. Don't scare the guest.
Well, I'm just concerned about my Delco dialect.
Oh, don't worry about that.
No. Not at all.
We forgive Philadelphians. It's okay.
I'm a Delco guy.
That's
Originally.
fine. Before we get going into the show too far, I just want to say thank you for your service.
Yes.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Well,
I doubt that sincerely, but
well, that's true.
You served really hard time at a time when it wasn't just showing up at a post. You were in the middle and the thick of it. We thank you for that.
Yes, 100%. So
yes, that was America's epic tragedy, Vietnam.
Yes.
Yep. You were there for 3 years, right, John?
Yeah, from 1967 to 1970. I actually signed up when I was in high school because I had no college plans, and that was the only way you can get a deferment besides being physically disabled. So I paid a guy $200 to get me into a Navy Reserve unit, and that's a lot of money in 1966. And I went to boot camp that summer between my junior year and senior year in high school. And then the following year, I went out again on a submarine chaser called the USS Barton. And we were scheduled to escort the USS New Jersey to Vietnam. But the thing I was on, which was a reconditioned World War II subchaser, broke down, and I spent about a year in the Caribbean between San Juan and Cuba and some of Jamaica, Ocean, Kingston, Montego Bay. So, but
and that's why he has such an epic tan.
Well, yeah. I've
stuck with you. Yeah.
I'm a big supporter of Vietnam veterans and the price that they paid, not only there, but post-Vietnam with post-traumatic stress disorder and
PTSD and things like that.
And Agent Orange and people overlook the women that serve too as nurses. I interviewed three nurses actually, 2 from Vietnam, 1 for Korea. But we can get to that at some point. Or talk about it anytime.
Absolutely.
It's your show.
Well, actually, it's your show. The show is all about you.
Oh,
but one of the things for our viewers and our listeners that have been following us for the 6 years now, we always close the show giving props to our veterans and first responders, because without people like you, we can't do these things that we do.
Right.
It's
Well, some people believe that Vietnam was about democracy. I mean, if we're talking about Vietnam, and it really wasn't. It was a civil war that we sent. My parents' generation, the greatest generation, sent their children 13,000 miles to get involved in a civil war, and as a result, there were 56,000 casualties there, and then post that. So, sometimes I'm criticized for that because I've been outspoken about it, that it was unnecessary, and it's something that we inherited from the French, Eisenhower. You guys probably know the history of it. And from Eisenhower to Kennedy to Johnson and Nixon and all the other stuff, And it's really, I remember all the rallies and all the, I don't know how old you guys are. You guys still appear to be too young for Vietnam, but it was a terrible time in our country, in our history. And it's a shame because I do know veterans, as does my film partner, Jill, knows veterans that are still suffering from Agent Orange and, yeah, and all the things that went with it, suicide and domestic violence and everything else. But anyway.
Right.
John, did you ever have a chance to go back since the fall?
To Vietnam?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I've never chosen to go back because I never chose to go back, I should say. I know veterans that went back to specific areas where there were battles, and now there's either apartment buildings on them or they're shopping malls. It would be equivalent to like building apartments at Gettysburg, in their minds. So I mean, there's things that they go back there for because they want to reminisce to them, or how it affected their lives. When you look at Vietnam, the World War II was real simple. There was guys with gray uniforms in Germany, and then there were the people in Japan that bombed Pearl Harbor. So everybody signed up. But when you look at Vietnam, and I've interviewed countless number of Vietnam veterans in my second life, they would be on China Beach, or they would be in a village with a person or somebody in the barracks that was working for them that was Viet Cong. So you didn't know who you were looking at. And you sent over guys, 17, 18, 19, well, the 17-year-olds, they lied about their age, 18, 19, et cetera, 20-year-olds who didn't know about a jungle. There were no lions and tigers and elephants in Guadalcanal. And you knew who the enemy was you were fighting. In Vietnam, it was altogether different. We weren't prepared. And it was a shame. And, in the name of joking, I make jokes about, Bob Hope shows and John Wayne rhetoric is what the whole thing was about. And I guess you could tell them, I'm I have very strong feelings about it.
The reason I asked you is I've had several friends in the last, since COVID really, who have gone there on vacation, and they come back and they say, what a beautiful country and how much fun they had there. And I ask myself, so what was all the fighting about then?
Well, it is a beautiful country, and there are people that go there on their honeymoon, and there are people that go there on vacations, and there are people that go there to tour the tunnels and some of the sites. And the Vietnamese people don't dislike us. They never disliked us from the time we got involved in the war. They didn't dislike. They actually wanted. They didn't want us there. They wanted to resolve their own issues. So yeah, it is a beautiful place, and it's a jungle. And I actually we interviewed an expat. She's a local resident of Radnor Township, which is a suburb of Philadelphia, and she's an English teacher in Saigon. And she's been on Jill and I have a show, and she's been on our show, and she's coming back December 20th. Flora, her name is, and she works in an elephant preserve as a volunteer, but she also has a job as a teacher, and she's lived there for 10 years. And yes, it is a beautiful place, and all those things are true, which makes it even more tragic in my mind.
Right. So anyway. the reason I let off, thanking you first of all, but getting into the Vietnam stuff is you're actually trying to fund a project right now about Vietnam. Is that correct?
Do we have a project about Vietnam?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Well, it's a developing project. Let me say that.
Right.
Okay. Because we have a couple of projects that we're working on. One is a World War II project that's also a possibility. But let me tell you this: Monsignor Bonner High School, which is in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, again, a suburb of Philadelphia. The land was donated by the Drexel family, the founders of Drexel University. The high school was built on it, and they had 17 of their sons killed in Vietnam. They also have an alumni, which is quite interesting. They have a Father Bill Atkinson, who might be the first American saint who was quadriplegic, went to Bonner High School, then went to Villanova University, became a priest. His brother Al Atkinson also went to Bonner, who played with the New York Jets. When they won the Super Bowl III, he was Joe Namath's roommate. And of course, John Cappelletti, the Heisman Trophy winner, who went to Bonner and then Penn State, where he was awarded the Heisman Trophy. So there's a connection between Delco, which is where Bonner is, Monsignor Bonner. And Delco is very popular nationally now with the first the mayor of Eastwick, and now another thing I think it's called Task. And so Bonner's famous for being in Delco, for having a connection to Villanova University because it's an Augustinian school, and the 17 sons killed there, and some of the, I'm going to say, celebrities that went to Bonner High School. So, and there's actually several guys that played in the NFL that went to Bonner, but I'm just, Anthony Becht, for example, went to Bonner High School. He played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But yeah, that's a project that we have in the works, and it has a Vietnam connection. Another Vietnam story, and Jill actually worked on this with me originally. There's a school in Northeast Philadelphia called Father Judge High School, and Father Judge High School had actually 27 sons killed in Vietnam. 27. Wow. It's the most of any private or parochial school in the country. And one day Jill and I were doing some work at St. Joe's University doing some filming there. I was approached by a Marine who said, do you know about Father Judge High School? I said, well, I know it's a school in Northeast Philadelphia, and that's all I know. He said, well, told me what I just said. Well, they had 27 guys killed in Vietnam, were his words. I said, really, 27? Where is it? And so he gave me the address. And it was late November. He met me up there. His name was Jim Curlin. He went to Father Judge High School, joined the Marines right after high school, went to Vietnam, fought in the Battle of Khao Sang Bay. And he showed me this monument that they have there in the names of 27 guys that were killed in Vietnam. And I said, did anybody ever do a story about this? And he said, no, there's some VHS stuff floating around, but nobody's ever done a story. So I went back, and Jill and I were working at a public access television station, and we started to drum up some stuff, and I started to do some digging, and then I got the Alumni Association interested, and then people started to put up money. So we were able to produce a film that's called "Remember the 27 Crusaders," and that was a fascinating story because when we met, the Alumni Association set up a meeting for us at their school, and I would say 20 of the families showed up and some of them were not interested at all. They wanted to forget everything. But some of them became really, really enthusiastic about the film, and the film was very successful. It wasn't entered in any film contest. I was a co-producer on it, and the other producer, he and I had, I wanted to enter the film in film festivals, and he didn't. But it was successful amongst veterans groups, and it's just. And what was interesting, we got to meet mostly the siblings. It was either a brother or a sister, and they told the sadness of the collateral damage of Vietnam wasn't just limited to, it extended out to the brothers and sisters, because it was the knock at the door, and who came? It was an officer, and the shock of the parents, and so many times when I would be talking, we must have talked to at least 15 families, and so many times and they were shocked that their son was killed, and I would sit there and say to myself, oh, what did you think was going to happen? I never said it out loud. And of course, there were some shocking things that they said. Some of the things didn't get into the film because we agreed that we didn't want to make it political. We wanted to make it more patriotic. And but one of the things was there was Kildare, his name was. I forget who his dad was, but their last name was Kildare, and they were Irish immigrants. So it was a mother and her two sons. And they came to the United States, and the one son enlisted in the Marines with the condition that he would become an American citizen. Their families would become American citizens. There was no father. It was just a mother and two sons. So he signed up and said, okay, and we'll be citizens. Well, he was killed. The mother went back to the recruiting officer and said to the recruiting officer, well, my son was killed in Vietnam. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, how about our citizenship? And he said, what citizenship? That's stunning. There was another example of a father who was a Guadalcanal Marine. His son joined the Marines and was killed in Vietnam. And his father became interested. He was very proud in the beginning. Now, this story that I'm telling you, I'm sorry, let me go back. Kildare's story came from the surviving son. And the surviving son was sent to Canada by his mother. So she was not going to have a chance of this other son being taken from her one way or another. So he went off to Canada. And it was through him that I got that story. The other one was the Guadalcanal Marine, who was very proud of his son when he joined the Marines. And it was typical Semper Fi, hoorah, Marine Corps, and very respectful. But then his son got killed. And then his father became, I'm not going to say sat up and paid attention, but he became like, why did my son die? What happened here? And what was it worth? Was there a purpose? And the more he dug, the more he realized that this was really wrong. And he became an underground railroad for getting guys to Canada. And this was a Guadalcanal World War II Marine that had done this. That story came from his daughter. There was just so many stunning stories. One, Natali, his name is, he's on the wall. Natali, he was, his mother found out that her son was killed on her birthday. So there was never kind of any birthdays after that. And that was told to me. That to me was a stunning story. One of the ones that I found most compelling for me was there was an Air Force. He was a load master on a plane, and if you recall, Nixon was going through the back door to go into Cambodia, and this man's recruitment was over, and he was going to be able to go home, but he said, "Well, I'll go on this mission." And the plane crashed in Cambodia, and he was killed. So they did not want to put his name on the wall in Washington because it was not considered killed in Vietnam. And the family, I think, sued or they filed something, but eventually his name got up on the wall. And I thought that was sad because when his brother told me the story, he got very emotional about it. So to produce a movie like that is very moving. It's very deep and detailed, and it's very educational and informative. And that's always been Joel's and mine mantra, to do something educational, informative, and entertaining. And although the Vietnam story wasn't entertaining, but it was educational and informative. And she got a chance to initially work on that with me. So we're hoping to achieve the same results, assuming we get the Bonner project. And then, if you want, I can tell you about the 14th Armor Division project as well, which is a World War II story.
See, I'm loving this because when I watch films, I love to watch those style of films. The natural, real occurrence, documentary style, based on, especially when it comes to military, So I would love to hear about the other project. I don't know about the other two guys. They're ready to go to sleep. I'm rolling with this.
I don't want to keep you. I don't want to put you guys to sleep and bore you.
Oh, no way.
This is fantastic.
We were
John. Nobody here is shy. If we were falling asleep, we'd tell you. Believe me.
Okay, thank you.
We're just listening intently.
We were approached by the Radnor Historical Society. The lady who's the director, Jennifer, contacted me and said, "Listen, I've got all these pictures from my grandfather. He had just passed away, and they're really interesting. You might want to come over and look at them." I said, "Oh, okay." She said, "I don't really know what to do with them." So I looked at the pictures, and it was the 14th Armored Division, and they liberated 100,000 POWs. They from Strasbourg all the way down to excuse me, I'm not sure where, Berchtesgaden.
There are no results for that.
They is that your phone or somebody's or what? Mine. I turned it off. They went down to Berchtesgaden. Anyway, the pictures were fascinating. There are these. As I'm going through the pictures, I'm saying, well, okay, they're going. It's a tank. It's a tank group. They're going through towns in Germany, and eventually here they are at Berchtesgaden, and I said, oh my God, they're sitting in a wine cellar, and one guy's sitting in Hitler's chair, and other guy's like sitting in a bathtub, and I said, wow, these pictures are like really incredible. And then she showed me a painting. She actually had a piece of artwork that was taken out of it. It was probably cut out of the frame and taken. And it's a painting of a woman. So she gave the pictures to her. I said, I don't know what I can do with the pictures. I said, except make copies of them. And she gave the pictures to her sister, who wrote a book. And she published a book about the 14th Armored Division, and now she's going to speak at the Radnor Library about the group. Now, if you watched Masters of the Sky, the Spielberg thing that was on one of the cable networks, there's I think it's chapter 8 or episode 8. Episode 8 is the 14th Armored Division liberating prisoners of war, some of whom were Tuskegee Airmen. And Jill and I had the good fortune of interviewing the son of a Tuskegee Airman, who was also told us some really interesting stories. But that's what the 14th Armored Division was most famous for, is the rescue of or the liberation of POWs. So she's written this book, and we're trying to raise money through grant writers as the Bonner Project, and to do the actual tour that they took, in about 6 days in Germany next year, hopefully. And the Bonner Project, well, we can do that locally.
Wow.
The president? Oh, that's Mark Kolkowitz. Yeah, we never did a story about Mark Kolkowitz. He owns that's another story. We've never come to fruition with that.
Hey, John, could you connect some dots for me, sir?
I'm sorry?
Could you connect some dots for me?
Sure.
You served brilliantly in Vietnam. And again, thank you for your service. And you're a filmmaker, but there's this period of time in between where you were, and I'm looking at my notes because I just want to say it properly. You were retired from SEPTA, which is Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority.
Right.
How did you go from working for the Transit Authority to becoming a filmmaker late in life, where there are young people dying to be filmmakers who never get the chance?
Well, it's a real quick story.
Too bad.
I started out after I got out of the Navy. Why my story's too long? I'll shorten them up.
No. You said no. You said it was too short. I said too bad.
No. It's I'll tell you. When I was 20 years old when I got out of the Navy, and I retired from as a director of transportation. So along the way, I got promoted through the ranks, and I went to Villanova University, and I went to graduate school at Cabrini, which is now Villanova University's property. But I got promoted through the ranks, and as part of my job as a director of transportation director, amongst other duties assigned, I would go out and speak in schools, and I had a lot of speaking engagements, so when I retired, I was approached by the director of the Radnor Library, and she said, the public television station is looking for someone to do a story about public transportation. And I thought to myself, who the hell wants to talk about that? Having done it for so long, I said, okay, where do I go and find out about this person or this stuff? So she takes me over to which is right around the corner from the library, this public television station, and introduces me to a man named George Strimmel. So George is now 90 years old. So he sits me down in front of 3 cameras and says, talk to the cameras. So I said, hello, my name is Jhn Ricciutti, and I am a retired director of transportation at SEPTA. I'd only been retired for about 6 months when this happened. He said to me, you were born to do this. I said, okay, I guess he needed a body, I thought, maybe, whatever. So my job was to bring in people that are transportation related. Well, I knew a lot of people that worked for SEPTA, and we could talk about buses and the railroad and trolleys and all the other these things that I thought were really terribly boring. So one day I went to George and I said, George, I would like to do something other than talk about trains and buses. He goes, well, what would you like to talk about? I said, well, I don't know. I'll find something. So I was at a dinner and I met 2 men, one who was general, coincidentally. Some things are just serendipitous. One man, Herb Armstrong, lived to be 102 years old. He was General Patton's admin, whatever. He was Patton's assistant. Went all the way to Czechoslovakia, wherever Patton went, he went. And he lived in Rudolf Hess's house during the occupation of Germany. And the other man that I met was named Jim Bard. Jim B-A-R-D, who was a POW from the Battle of the Bulge. And where was he? He was in Dresden as a POW. So what happened there. I got them both, interviewed them. I said, this is really funny. I said, do you know any other veterans I can interview? They gave me the names of one person. One thing led to another. Now, I'm interviewing the next guy walking down the street, book authors, lawyers, criminals, anybody. I said, this is really fascinating. So then I said, you know what? I like to make a story about SEPTA. So because I still was on friendly terms with them and I hadn't criticized them in any great detail, I went and to the general manager at the time, Jeff Knuppel, and I said, Jeff, I'd like to do a documentary about the SEPTA's control center at 1234 Market on the 19th floor. And he goes, sure, what do you need? So he gave me everything I needed. We hired a film crew. We George raised the money. I think he raised $15,000, got it from an anonymous person. And we produced a documentary about SEPTA's control center. And the film editor, a brilliant guy, got an Emmy for it, for film editing. So I said, this is great. And then it went from there. George retired. I became the interim general manager, and George was a fascinating guy. He was 80. 80 years old when he met his, I don't know, third wife, who had all the money in the world and wanted the rest. And he married her. He moved to Philadelphia, still living a wonderful life. And I said, well, I don't know anything about running a television station. Well, what do you want me to do? He said, ask Jill. And I said, who's Jill? He said, you know, the lady that brings in the films. I said, okay. I called up Jill. I said, you want to do it? She says, no, I can't work with you. You're too macho. You're Italian. I can't work with anyone. So I said, she went to George and told George, I can't work with that guy. And she goes, oh no, he's really easy. You'll have no trouble with him. And she was right. So she came to work for us, and we agreed on how much she would be paid. And within an hour, she was running everything. And so then I had a chance to expand my thoughts and do other stuff. So, and it just went from there. It was incredible experience, and it continues to be an incredibly fun experience. And then so Jill and I had philosophical differences with the board of Radnor Studio 21, because they were a bunch of mustache Pete's, old men, and they got tired of my act, which you probably don't find hard to believe, and because I can easily get on people's nerves. And they got rid of me. And then Jill said, well, I don't need this bullshit. And she left. So then we got together, and Jill was was invited. This gets interesting. She gets invited by ministries in Kensington to go to do some filming for children that get to eat a full meal on a Thursday night. So Jill and I drove up to Kensington. Jill has a white BMW. I said, we can't go up in that, Jill, because only drug dealers drive those cars. So we can't go up in that car. So we went up in my truck, my Ford truck, and we drove around. And she said, we got to make a movie about this. So, and I said, okay, it's really awful, but she had a different vision than I did. And because I just thought it was just really scary, but for her, it was like a fabulous moment. So she went to a source gave her the money, and we produced a film that got an Emmy nomination for which was a story called Kensington in Crisis. And and other than looking like pure drug porn, this was a film that was educational and informative. Can't say it was entertaining. It was entertaining in a sense that it kept your attention, but it was. She did it. We had a fabulous editor, and Jill was the co-editor on it. So between Jill and the editor, Isaac Mell, his name is, brilliant editor, and between the two of them, produced this really good film. The music was contributed by one of the Hooters. I don't know if you heard about the Hooters band, which is a local Philadelphia band. They're still in circulation. They travel in Europe and everything. And they contributed some of the music, which coincidentally had a real strong drug flavor to it. And we interviewed some really good people to produce the film. And it wasn't just the crappy, awful stuff that you see, people in awful situations. It was a very good film. And I think it's still, where can you see the film, Joe? YouTube. The film is on YouTube. It's called Kensington in Crisis.
Yes. Yep. Actually,
anyone can see it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a stupid question. We're interviewing.
No questions are stupid. What?
Oh, wait. I can promise. We are seeing you, sir, I'm assuming, in your home, and Jill is there. It sounds like making dinner or
I'm in her house.
You're in her house. Gotcha.
In her house, and she's making cookies.
She let you in?
She let me in.
Well,
yeah.
She offered him cookies.
Her husband's here.
Right?
Her husband's here. The things are.
That answers the next three questions.
Okay.
The fourth question is, you baited me with this before we went on the air. How many times have you been married?
3. 3 times. Okay, is that hard to believe?
No.
Well, wait a minute. The first time I was 20, I was in the Navy. It was stupid. Okay. and then got divorced, and then I met a girl at a car show, and then I married her because I was suffering from Catholic guilt, so I married her, and then I decided I wasn't going to get married again, and then I saw a girl a few years later, and she walked like Ava Gardner, and I thought, well, that's it, and I'm still married to her, 25 years. So, yeah.
Well, you did better than Frank Sinatra did.
Oh, yeah. Well, he married her. He shouldn't have. I only married somebody to walk like her.
Now, on a little more serious side, you have won 11 Telly Awards. You've been nominated for Emmys twice, and you've won one.
Right.
You are a very honored filmmaker. Would you tell our friends and fans who are watching what a Telly Award is?
Well, a Telly Award it's very respected. There's some politics that swirl around Emmys. It's like Sundance Film Festival. There's some politics involved in that. But an Emmy is looked at truly. I mean, I'm sorry, a Telly is looked at truly as a very respected award. It's not. It doesn't have the same elan, I'll say, that the Emmy has. But it's well respected in the community, the film community, and I went to Jill and I went to Julius Nasso's house. You know Julius Nasso? Julius, I don't know if you know who he is. He made Coming to America.
Yep.
It's about Jewish gangsters, and he has an Oscar, and I think he did some stuff, some other things, and I saw he has Telly Awards, and I said, oh. I said, oh, we got a couple of those too, and I think he was a little bit, yeah. So,
well,
yeah,
I don't have to send my Emmy back. It's okay if I keep mine.
I'm sorry.
I don't have to send my Emmy back. It's okay if I keep mine.
No, you should keep it. I saw it over your left your.
Yeah.
I saw your. No, I'm not. Listen, I'm not putting any awards are. I mean, I don't care if they're paper awards. I know,
but you have one, so you know.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, and
I think
Jill was on board when we started to make the film. She was just between pillar and post at the completion of the whole thing. But Jill has a Emmy nomination, so I will say this: I never, ever set out to do it. Never imagined I would ever be able to. I would never ever imagine that any of this would ever come about. Here, I'll just give you a quick thing. The Telly Awards honor excellence in video and television across all screens, founded in 1979 to honor local, regional, and cable television commercials with non-broadcast video and television program added. Soon the award has evolved. So that's a quick synopsis of what it is. But I feel, yeah. What's that?
They get 13,000 entries.
Yeah, 13 entries we've had.
13,000
So
entries.
13,000 entries. I'm sorry.
Wow,
See,
wow.
she has, if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't know what to say next.
And
Yeah.
for our
And
Pennsylvania friends and fans, a piece of Radnor, Pennsylvania trivia. Back when TV Guide was about this big and was 15 cents and was in everybody's home, Walter Annenberg published it, and the home office was in Radnor, Pennsylvania.
You're right. Right on Lancaster Avenue. Right off of Lancaster. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay that it was there.
But I never thought I'd ever do this, do this and produce. The other thing I really truly was educational, informative, and entertaining, which I really thought when I met George Martirano. We were introduced to him. Joe was actually finishing up the Kensington film, and I had a friend, Joe Petrellis, who was a 96-year-old forensic and fashion photographer. And we also did a story about Joe. And Joe said, "Come over to my house. I want to introduce you to someone." So this was this Christmas, New Year's Eve, 2019. And George had been out of jail for a couple of years. In fact, he still was not allowed to drive, and he still, I don't know if he was on a monitor or what, but I went over to George's house, and went over to Joe Berjolis' house, introduced me to George Martirano. George Martirano is the son of Raymond Long John Martirano. And Raymond Long John Martirano was Angelo Bruno of the famous Philadelphia mob, who was connected to the Gambinos. He was his consigliere or his driver. So Angelo Bruno was also George Martirano's Christian godfather. I initiated it with Christian, so I didn't want to say godfather. So he was probably both. So he proceeds to tell me his story. I said, well, what is it about you? He says, well, he tells me he went to prison. He was sentenced to life without parole. He was essentially for marijuana. I mean, even though he was the Home Depot of marijuana, he was sentenced to it. But the surrounding characters, the nefarious Bobby Simone was a famous defense lawyer in Philadelphia who was nefarious, and he sold him out because Simone was a degenerate gambler, drug addict, and drunk. And he sold Martirano out to Nicky Scarfo because Scarfo wanted his Martirano's business, and therefore he sold him out to Judge John Hannum, who was a federal judge appointed by Nixon, and there's a famous club in Philadelphia, which I won't call, that Hannah was a member of, and only WASPy people could be members of it. And Hannah used to bring Simone into the club. Now, at that time, you couldn't get a black, an Italian, or a Jew going into this place in Philadelphia. It was strictly WASPy. And Simone used to go in there because Simone used to provide him with ladies of the evening. And Hannum lived a double life because his son told us that when we interviewed him. And he sold Martirano out because he had gambling debts that he was getting money from Scarfo. So he was giving Scarfo free legal advice. So you have Scarfo connected to Simone, connected to Hannum, and then of course you have the prosecutor, that I call the worst kind of Italian, an Italian who didn't want to be an Italian, and that was Lou Pacini. And he, when we were making the film, I know Pacini had an ugly divorce because the more you research, the more you find things. And I tracked down his wife, and I was hoping his ex-wife, and I was hoping to get a really bloody, gory story about him, about what kind of a person he was. So anyway, that was so Hannum sends, because he had no sentencing guidelines at the time, and Reagan was all into doing drugs. So Hannum sentenced Martirano, first-time offender with no gun, to life without parole, and he served 32 years of it. And we interviewed one of the lawyers that worked to get him out of jail, which was Andrea Folks, and then the other famous lawyer that actually got him out was the one that got Andrea Knox out of Italy. So the stories that we got on, that we got from Martirano were absolutely so entertaining. And there's a couple, two of them that I'll quickly tell you if you got the time. The Martirano family, along with Angelo Bruno, they owned clubs, and they had cigarette machines and everything, vending machines all over Philadelphia. But they also owned near the Walnut Street Theater. There's like an alley in Philadelphia where, and along that alley there was like, I'm going to say like a small cafe, a bar that the Martirano family owned. Paul Newman and his wife Joanne Woodward were funding a funding, funding a film, not a film, a play along there. So Paul Newman would like to smoke, and he would frequently go out. And young George Martirano, he would be standing out front of there, like he was like the doorman, or like the host, greeting people that would come in and out from the theater and whatnot, because they probably did a great theater business. So one night, he got to be friendly with Paul Newman, and they would talk all the time. And Newman was a Budweiser drinker, so Georgie would give him Budweisers and whatever, and they would bullshit. I don't know. Am I allowed to say, shit and stuff like that on the show?
Oh yeah, fuck no.
Fuck yeah.
I won't drop any F-bombs. So
we'll do that.
One night he comes out, Paul Newman comes out, and he says to George Martirano, George, I made a lot of movies in my career, but I never made a movie about a gangster. He said, you know any gangsters? And George said, no, I don't know any gangsters. And it was probably, George said it was like 10 of them in the restaurant at the time. And he goes, no, I don't know any gangsters. And I thought that was a funny story. And the other story I thought was funny was there was somebody that died. I'm going to say died. And George's father paid to have the guy buried. And they paid the undertaker. And one day they saw the undertaker, I don't know, maybe a month later, and the undertaker said, hey, when are you going to get rid of this body? He said, well, I paid you to get rid of the guy. He says, nah, you gave the money to those guys. They gambled the money. They spent it on women. We don't. And he goes, well, all right, here's more money. Go you get rid of him. He goes, well, no, I don't want you give the money to the other. So he gives the money to the gangsters again, and the gangsters go. And 2 months later, he goes, when are you going to get rid of this body? And he said, I paid to get rid of the body. He said, where is it? We'll take care of it ourselves. He goes, it's in the Good Humor truck. I said, you mean the one that goes around the neighbor? The neighbor? Yes, yeah, the body's in the ice cream truck. Okay. One last one. Now, George Martirano, father, Raymond Longjohn, lived on 7th and Fitzwater Street in Philadelphia, which is near a restaurant called a Saloon. And it's a very narrow street that he lived on. So George had a big load of marijuana came up in the middle of the night in a U-Haul truck. Well, George said, I don't know, where am I going to put this? So we drove the U-Haul truck. He told you, the guy said, well, it's your problem now. I don't want it. It was like a 50, it was a big box truck. I don't know how big. George said it was big. It was all full of marijuana. So he said, well, I'll just drive it over to the police station. So he drove the truck over to the police station. He goes in there, tells the desk sergeant, listen, I just got a big truckload of furniture came up from North Carolina. Can I leave this truck in here for like a couple days till I get it moved? He goes, yeah, sure. He said, what can I? Yeah, he said, just buy a couple pizzas. So he went out and bought like $200 worth of pizza, and they put it in the police station. And they left the truck full of marijuana in the parking lot of the police department. I mean, you can't make those kinds of stories up. You can't. Wow. So the story about marijuana, the story about Martirano was he was like the ideal prisoner. And eventually he got out through the help of Ted Simon, who was the one who got Amanda Knox out of Italy, and Andrea Folks, who we did interview. Ted Simon didn't want to interview with us. He's around. He lives in Philadelphia. He's a brilliant lawyer, but he wouldn't do an interview with us. And I always thought, truthfully, that of any, there's never been a true Philadelphia mob story, and he's one of the last living legends. And I thought once we produced this Martirano story, which won Best Documentary at First Glance Film Festival in Philadelphia, I thought for sure that the Netflix. We actually even went to Paramount, but Paramount I think tried to they invited us out. Paramount invited us out, and I think they wanted to buy it from us for free or get it for as cheap as they could. And I think it's a great story. I'll probably be dead by the time it gets sold and made into a Netflix series, but it's really, George's story is incredible about his time in prison. All the time he was in prison. This is how slick the government can be. He gets a prisoner comes to him at 2:00 in the morning into his cell, and the prison guard says, "Well, I want to introduce you to John Gotti." So Gotti was his cellmate for 2 years, and they used to talk to each other. They developed like a code, and they would talk about philosophy, and they would talk about Shakespeare, and it was all coded, so they would be talking about what was going on the outside. And if you remember the scene in Goodfellas where Paul, what's his name?
Sorvino.
Yeah, Paul has all this food's being brought in, lobsters and steaks and everything. It's in Goodfellas. Well, that actually happened. Because we interviewed a prison guard when Martirano was in prison, and he said he never saw shrimps and clams come in, but they used to come in every Sunday, and they would be, and the Italian guys would be cooking them up. This was in Graterford prison, so I mean, that kind of stuff is entertaining, even though they were criminals. But
John, anyway. I have a question for you, sir. You are naming a lot of famous names of people who perhaps weren't quite upstanding citizens. You have no fear of retribution for mentioning all these people, some of whom might still be alive, or their families might still be alive?
No. I because I've done my homework, and I know if you're talking about the judge, or you're talking about the judge's son, or you mean?
I'm not talking about legal things. I'm not talking about legal retribution. I'm talking about, someone getting angry that you're telling things they don't want told, and you end up someplace unhappy.
If our viewers or listeners are interested, we did interview George Martirano about 6 months ago.
Yes,
all the names that John has become forthcoming with tonight were only a very small portion of that story. There were a lot more names that George was allowed to use. So retribution on the filmmakers because of the name drops? No, because it's already been dropped.
Yeah. I interviewed a guy by the name of John Light. Jill interviewed him as well. You can Google John Light. He's been on lots of shows, and John and I became when his book came out. George Anastasia wrote his book, and I invited John to my house, and he gave my wife a copy of the book, Gotti's Rules, and he had written inside the book.
Sorry, could you say that?
I had written inside the book. He had written inside the book in red Sharpie. My wife's name is Joan. He said, "Hi, Joan. Glad to meet you. I promise I won't kill your husband." Light probably killed a half a dozen people for God.
John Light is another guest that we had on this past year. Yeah. So, and so he now sits on, is it the board or Congress?
He's in New Jersey. He's in
Jersey, but he's a commissioner. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
when you talk, there's two stories that I always wanted to do, and they got canceled out. One was a guy named Bob Johnson. If you want to know anything about Vietnam, Google the Phoenix Group. and Bob Johnson was recruited as a senior at the University of North Carolina. Very waspy looking, blonde hair, blue eyed, captain of the tennis team, captain of the soccer team. And he was recruited. And a Vietnam veteran who was a Silver Star recipient, shot 5 times in Vietnam, came to me and said, I want to introduce you to a man named Bob Johnson. He's suffering from dementia as a result of Agent Orange. And he wants to confess his sins because he can't sleep. And he's tortured by whatever happened in Vietnam. Again, Phoenix Group. So I think he was a major player in this Phoenix Group. So I met Bob Johnson in a place in Philadelphia. I'm sorry, the suburbs of Philadelphia. And he came to me, and we sat and we had a conversation, and he started telling me what he did, showing me letters, took out pictures, and I'm having visions of 60 minutes quality in my head. This guy's story is incredible. And as he kept going on, I mean, he was confessing on, and I had my phone on, and I was recording everything. I said, do you mind if he goes, no, I want to talk. And he told me about all these horrible things he had, who his support staff was like convicts. They were people that the Vietnamese had let out of prison. They were the worst kinds of people, and those were his army. So he didn't even wear a uniform in the jungle, and it was all search and destroy. So at one point in the conversation, he leaned over across the table to me, and his steel blue eyes are about 10 inches away from me, and he said, "Are you familiar with My Lai?" And I said, yeah, I'm very familiar with My Lai. And he said, they were amateurs. Oof. And I said, oh, okay. So this was like on I'm going to say a Friday that I interviewed him. So that Monday I get a phone call now because, as it was pointed out by Jeff, that I get to talk to a lot of people that are different. I get a phone call and it comes up as no ID, but I answered it anyway because it could have been somebody with a burner phone. And it's, hi, this is Jennifer. Are you Jhn Ricciutti? Yeah. Who's Jennifer? She said, I'm Bob Johnson's wife. And I said, oh, hi, how are you? And she said, are you going to interview my husband on Wednesday? I said, yeah. And I'm thinking, she wants to come along or whatever. She goes, no, you're not. What do you mean, no, I'm not? Why not? You're not going to interview him. And I want you to destroy everything that he's ever shown you. I want you to delete anything that you may have recorded. And I want you to forget anything he's ever said. And because the person that introduced me to him is a friend of mine still to this day, Silver Star recipient, shot 5 times in Vietnam. I did not retort anything she said. I said, okay, all right. And I said, that was the end of it. She said, thank you. And she hung up the phone. I didn't know that Jennifer was a very, very attractive Chinese woman until I met her at his funeral that she invited me to, and that everybody should have this funeral, where it was at a very exclusive country club. He had died about 6 months later. And she contacted me through this friend. She invited me to his funeral, very exclusive country club, where there were filet mignon sliders and an open bar of clams, raw clams, Clams Casino, oysters Rockefeller, and all the booze you could drink. And she sat next to me and she talked to me and she was actually stunning. I never knew until that moment that she was Asian. And I never brought up the subject of the interview, nor did she. I never said anything about any of it, but the things that he told me, those I won't repeat. and were just absolutely stunning. But if you Google either his name or the Phoenix group, you'll find out plenty. The other one that I wanted to do was I was approached by the crime writer George Anastasia. He's a Philadelphia guy. He's also involved in this Netflix thing with the Philadelphia mob from the 90s. Not Nicky Scarfo, Skinny Joey Merlino, and he approached me about there's a famous story in Philadelphia about a local baker in Ardmore who owned a place called the Viking Pastry, and he had a girlfriend, who he was very much in love with, and they went to a bar on South Street, and there's stories been written about it, but there's never been any resolve. And they left the bar, and they were last seen getting into his Dodge Ram truck, and they disappeared, never were found to this day. No bodies, no truck, no nothing. And through my own research, some people told me, well, there's a place that crushes vehicles in Kensington, and people pointed this direction, that direction. So I went to meet his family, the kid that owned the bakery, and they lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And the mother told me the whole story. The father was incapable of talking about anything. He just sat there numb. But his mother told me everything about. She believed that it was the girl's ex-husband who was paying her an exorbitant amount of child support and alimony, that he had her killed, but they couldn't prove it. And so I said, well, would you'll do an interview with this? And she said, yeah. So she drove up to our Radnor studio to do the interview with her daughter. And we sat down, and I introduced her, and she said, I can't talk. Well, I thought maybe she can't talk because she was choked up or she was feeling awkward. And so I said, okay, we'll stop the cameras right now. So she said, well, I can't talk. I said, why can't you talk? And she said, well, I talked to the FBI yesterday, and they told me they were on the verge of finding out who killed. And this is like 6 years ago. I had this discussion with her, and so nothing's ever been found then. And she says, well, I can't talk because I said, why did you tell the FBI anything? She said, well, they called me last night. I said, well, how'd they know that, you know? And I said, oh my God. They got to her, and they shut her down. Wasn't going to tell me anything. That was the end of it. But she was going to tell me the whole story on the air, all the things that were never published or printed, because she wanted to vent, because she didn't think that anybody was doing anything about it. And that was the end of that. But those are two stories I always wanted to do. And the one because it was Vietnam related, and the other one because it was crime related. And George Anastasia put me onto that story. So,
wow.
Amazing.
Wow. So I do want to say to all our viewers and our listeners later on, make sure you check the show notes up above or down below, depending on when you're watching or listening to us. All the information on John and Jill and what they do is there, so that you can go check out a lot of the stuff that we've discussed this evening, the films, upcoming films. The two of them together are a powerhouse when it comes to these style films.
yeah.
I will say that.
Thank you.
You know, we are a little over time, so
Okay, I'm sorry.
with that, no,
No.
don't be sorry. I mean,
No, that was
these are the
awesome.
types of shows that we love, because it was like 2 questions or 3 questions asked, but you answered 30 questions with the answer, and it's perfect. We didn't have to do anything but sit here and look pretty.
I'm still trying to absorb it all.
Right. You know, so with that being said, I do want to say, Mr. Holman, do you have any last questions for this amazing guest?
Yeah, I have one. Based on everything that you've been talking about, Is there somebody that is already passed that you wish you had the opportunity to interview?
Is there somebody that's passed away, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there was a Tuskegee airman that I knew who I interviewed his son, and I had the opportunity to interview him while he was alive. I've interviewed several pilots from World War II, a door gunner, which is an interesting story. I don't know how much time you want to give me, but I can tell you his story. That I wish I had interviewed a Tuskegee airman. But the door gunner story, I don't know how much time do I have. I'll be real quick.
Go ahead, go for it.
Okay, the door gunner was 17 years old when he joined the U.S. Army Air Force. He was a native of New York. He was on the first bombing raid over Berlin, where 60 planes were shot down. But on one of the later missions, his plane was shot down, and he was a prisoner of Stalag 17. And Jim, his name, was in Stalag 17 with the guys who ultimately wrote the play and the movie Stalag 17. Mm-hmm. So when he was repatriated back to the United States, he became a New York City policeman, and he rose to the rank of inspector, which is an appointment by the mayor of New York. And he, the people who wrote the story of Stalag 17 invited him to the play and ultimately to the movie. And I said to him when he was telling me, I said, "Wait a second, were you the guy like in charge of Popeye Doyle and Frank Serpico?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." And he became real. Like what I said, well, what was Popeye Doyle like? From the French Connection. Oh, he said he was great. When he would like interrogate a prisoner, they would put him in like a closet or like a locker, and then he would beat on the locker with a nightstick, and that's how he would be able to get confessions out of him. And I said, what about Frank Serpico? And when I said that, he shut down. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. I'm not talking about Frank Serpico. I said, does he live in Europe? And he goes, I know where he lives, but that's another story. That was the end of it. Yeah, Frank Burke, his name was. I'm sorry. I said Jim. His name was Frank Burke. Yeah. I also interviewed Bill Guarnier from the Band of Brothers. I was the last person to interview him alive. And when he died, his son told me, thanks a lot. You killed my father with that awful interview.
Oh, God.
It was a joke, though. He was made a joke.
Oh, my God.
Bill was a funny guy. When I interviewed Bill Guarnier, I said to him, I met him in advance. And, he was in the Band of Brothers, right? And and I said to him, and Bill, there's a couple things I'm going to ask you, but you can't say fuck, because Bill dropped F-bombs like they were nothing. Because I usually interview people in advance of me interviewing them. I talk to them to see what they're going to be like, how interactive are they going to be, et cetera. Get a feel for them. This last story, then we'll go. And I said to him, there's no drop of the F-bombs. And Bill lived in a 14-foot row home in South Philadelphia. And he looked at me and he said, kid, are you fucking telling me I can't say fuck in my house? I go, well, okay, Bill, then we'll just have to, we'll delete it out. That's why. Okay. And then was one part I was asking him, I had read his book, Band of Brothers. And I was talking to him about the German paratroopers. So I said, now, Bill, I'm going to get to a part of the interview. I'm going to ask you about the paratroopers. He goes, yeah, that's okay. Bill was like 90 when I interviewed him. And he goes, yeah, that's no problem. So we got to the part of the interview. And I said, Bill, I want to talk to you about the German paratroopers. He looks at me, kid, are you fucking stupid? Didn't we talk about that earlier? I go, no, I'm sorry, Bill. And I just went along with it. I just let it go like it was nothing. He was a great interview. Great interview. All right. I'm sorry. I know I went past your time.
No, you're good,
it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I don't have to pee yet, so we're good. I mean, Jeffrey Mark might have to. Mr. Holman's probably getting a little hungry. So Jeffrey Mark, any last questions?
John, you obviously have like 17,431 stories to tell.
I have many stories. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about writing a book about you?
I'm writing memoirs. Jill has helped me with. We interviewed someone So I'm not. There would only be vignettes. I'm not going to write a whole story. I'm just going to write vignettes.
That'd be good, though.
Yeah, no, I'll give that one.
I mean, I could tell. I have SEPTA stories. I have.
Well, as we saw tonight, folks, we could probably do a 5-part miniseries with this gentleman.
Thank you.
But like I said before, make sure you check the show notes up above or down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. All John and Jill's information. They're business partners, folks. They're a powerhouse in the industry. Check them out. Watch the stuff. Like, we've been blessed to interview multiple people sent from these films, and you love those shows, so hey, you're gonna love their shows. So with that, Mr. Jeffrey Mark, where can people find you on the social medias?
Well, as it is spelled right there below to my right, Jeffrey Mark. I'm on Facebook, Jeffrey Mark Showbiz, and Instagram. I believe it's at Jeffrey Mark at LinkedIn. And if you love this show and look at who my two co-hosts are, how could you not? There's two sister shows to this one. Jeffrey Mark Plays Ella, which Ben produces for us, which every week we play Ella's music on a theme, Ella Fitzgerald, that is. And I give you all kinds of insider stories about how the music was made and why it's important. And we're producing a 5-episode special arc. Jeffrey Mark Plays Merman, being Ethel Merman, and the same is true. Insider stories about her music and the shows from which the music came. And I've got 2 books I'm working on, and I'm rehearsing 82 songs for a singing tour next year. So I'm a busy boy, but my heart belongs to Ben and Jeff.
Mr. Homan.
I'll follow that up with go to stilltoking.com. You'll find out everything you need to know about us, or give us a follow on our YouTube channels, Still Toking Productions, and Talking with the Dead on Facebook. Keep it live.
Yeah.
And I want to thank John. John, you had some fantastic stories. I really, really appreciated those.
Right.
I had a few questions. They all got answered just listening to you describe everything that you do, and it was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So again, folks, like I said, excuse me. Now I got the little cough bug there. Check the show notes so you can find out all the information on John and Jill and everything they do, including their companies and things that they work with. It's all there. It's very simple. Just read. If you need the glasses, I'll send you a pair. I don't mind. But in all seriousness, to all our veterans and first responders, we want to thank you for doing what you do so people like us can come up here and do what we do. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. We're out of here.
Have a happy.
Bye.